Good evening. Glad you're all awake. I hope you're not hungry. I hope your stomach is not making more noise than what I'm speaking. Let's bow our heads in prayer together. Our Father, we thank you, Lord, that you are the God who speaks and are not silent. And we thank you for speaking to our hearts during these days. Be with us this evening as we quieten our hearts before you. Speak to us in the still small voice. Like little Samuel, we want to say, speak, Lord, for we are listening. So we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. The second session in our study is on religious barrier. Our theme is breaking barriers, building bridges, and this evening we are looking at breaking religious barriers. Now barriers come in different shapes and sizes, but the strongest is the religious barrier. A person from another faith, if they have to make a commitment, it is a barrier. It is very difficult from their side, because they have to overcome a lot of obstacles. And sometimes it is more difficult for a nominal Christian to respond to Christ, because he thinks, I'm already a Christian. Why should I make a commitment? So that barrier is a religious barrier, because he or she thinks they are already on the track. To tell them, hey, look here, you're not on the track. This is what Christianity is all about. To share with them that truth, and their response to that becomes difficult as well. Now remember, in the Old Testament times, the Lord chose the nation of Israel to be a light to the nations, or to be the light to the Gentiles. But over the period of time, they thought they were God's special people, and the non-Jews were God's condemned people. So as a result, they had said, nothing to do with Gentiles. We don't want to do anything with those pagans, as it were. We are God's chosen people. That was their mindset. And when Jesus came down to earth, he wanted to break that religious barrier that people thought that only the Jews are going to go to heaven. Only the Jews are God's chosen people. That God's plan was only for them. And in this scenario, in Mark's Gospel chapter 7, we read about the incident of the Syrophoenician woman. Mark puts it across that way. The Matthew Gospel rendering of that calls it as a Canaanite woman. Basically, if you want to put it in a broad umbrella, a Gentile woman. How does Jesus break that barrier to reach out to an individual whom the Jews believed did not really require the gospel at all? That they were the ones, and the context of that passage in Mark's Gospel chapter 7, they are talking about clean and unclean. The Pharisees were very particular about cleaning the outside. And they said, we are clean. We have done this ritual. So as a result, God has accepted us. But God was trying to tell them, hey, look, it's not the external religion. It's not the external rituals of a religion that really matters. What matters is your personal heart relationship with God. So, the context of that starts off that way by Jesus' interaction with the Jews, with the Pharisees, to telling them it's not what comes on the outside that matters, but what's really there on the inside. And then he's quite upset with them, if you were to say, and as a result, he decides to leave that place and go to this place called Tyre. And Tyre was a typical pagan Gentile community. So that's the context of this passage. In order to teach the individuals, the Jews, that there are no religious barriers for God, he deliberately then moves from their understanding that it is only the external that matters. We are doing all these good works, all these good rituals. So Jesus deliberately moves from there into the area of Sidon, Tyre. So the barriers that faced the Canaanite woman were two. Number one, the barrier of the clean and the unclean. The Jews considered the Gentiles as unclean. They said, we are clean. So for the Syrophoenician woman, the Canaanite woman, to respond to the gospel, she had to deal with this. Their understanding of the Jews, that it is the external, it is the rituals that matter. And even in today's world, if a person is coming from a nominal Christian background, they think it's the rituals that matter. We have been baptized as a child, we have been confirmed as we grew up, we are doing all the regular requirements, and to get across the message to them becomes difficult. But this is what? This barrier was the same barrier that this lady, Canaanite lady, faced. Also, if you're coming from a totally non-believing background, a non-Christian background, the rules and regulations and the requirements of what is clean and unclean can sometimes be upsetting or a barrier for a person to respond. Secondly, you also have the barrier of the uncaring people. Now, who are the uncaring people? In Matthew's Gospel, chapter 15, verses 23 and 24, it says, the disciples came and implored him, saying, send her away, because she keeps shouting at us. I'm sure you're familiar with that passage, that's why I've not read that passage, but to give it to you in a gist, here's this woman who has a child who has been demon-possessed, and as a result she wants the child to be liberated from this demon, so she looks for Jesus, comes to him, cries out to him, Lord, Son of David, do something for my child. Okay? And she continues to do that. And here were the disciples who are upset with the pestering of this unclean woman, and as a result, that was a barrier that she had to face. Now, how did Jesus break that barrier? How did Jesus break the barrier? Now, a couple of important truths here. When you and I are called to be bridge builders, we have a lot of religions in our country. We have a lot of nominal Christians in our country. How do we break the barriers to build those bridges across? How did Jesus do it? How did Jesus do it? What did Jesus do in verse 24? Jesus left the discussions over there and then immediately went to Tyre in Sidon. So how did Jesus break the barrier? The first thing is the circumstances that led to the Gentile woman's salvation. The first thing that Jesus did was to respond to what he knew that God was preparing this woman in Tyre, Sidon, for her to respond to the gospel. Important truth when it comes to building bridges. God is not calling us to be involved in the task of evangelism on our own. God says that we are co-workers together with him. So we need to be sensitive to the voice of God, to whom he is leading us, who God is preparing for us, so that the right words said at the right time in the right manner would also have the right fruit. The Lord knew that this lady here has a heart for God. The Lord knew how, when she comes over, she says, Lord, Son of David, I know you can do this. Pagan lady, Gentile background. So let's look at the preparation that God does for us. It is not that God is sending us out into the world and saying, go into all the world and preach the gospel, make disciples, full stop. What did he also say along with that? Lo, I am with you. He's sending us on the mission, but he has gone before to prepare the hearts of people. So instead of we knocking on hard doors and hard walls and hard heads, if you're sensitive, ask God, God, you show me who's the individual whom you are preparing. So, the Lord's departure from this place to Tyre, a couple of important things. Number one, it was intentional. it was intentional. Okay, verse 24 says, Jesus got up and went away from there. He got up and went away from there. Oftentimes, I'm sure you heard this phrase, why should we share the gospel with an individual who has heard it 10 times and is not responded? Why shouldn't we spend our time being sensitive to God to find out whom God is preparing so that we'll be able to share the gospel effectively? A lot of our energies in evangelism is spent in reaching reached people, as it were. Now this is where this important lesson that we learn from Jesus' ministry here. It was intentional. He decided, he made up his mind. He got up from there. Now Mark puts it across very clearly over there when he uses the little word but. If you study Mark's gospel, if you notice, Mark's gospel is a gospel of quick successions. And this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. A lot of the ands come in, or a lot of immediately he did this. But when it comes in this passage, Mark introduces this word, but over there. Okay? But Jesus got up and went away from there. So Jesus took a stand, leaves the Jewish territory and goes to a non-Jewish territory, breaking down the barrier that kept the gospel from the Gentiles. Is that many individuals who have never even heard the gospel once in our own country? Yes. And we need to be sensitive to the voice of God, to be intentional about it and ask God, show me where you want me to speak, to whom you want me to speak. And as we are sensitive, we will be surprised to see that soil that God has already prepared. Secondly, it was also geographical. It was intentional. It was also geographical because he went to a specific place. Tyre is about 30 miles away from Capernaum and about 40 to 50 miles on foot. So it would have taken around 2 to 3 days to go there. Tyre is in the land of Phoenicia, and in ancient times, Tyre enjoyed an alliance with King David. Later, Tyre was wiped out by Alexander the Great, in keeping with the prophecy that is mentioned in Ezekiel chapter 26. And in the early years of the Roman Empire, Phoenicia was politically a part of Syria, but geographically and culturally, it remained distinctively Greek. So here's a place, okay, important place. God knows about this place. God knows about this one individual. That's interesting in Jesus' pattern of ministry, isn't it? One individual. Oftentimes we want numbers. God says, no, be sensitive for that one individual, and then God will give the result. Thirdly, it was also seclusional. In other words, there was no big fanfare about it. Jesus did not say, look, you guys are not doing this, so I'll show you. I will go to this place and see what I can do here. No. There was no fanfare about it. In fact, it says in verse 24, when he had entered the house, he wanted no one to know about it. He wanted no one to know about it. Sad to say, in this day of technology, we want everybody to know what we are doing. As soon as a meeting is sometimes in the middle of the meeting itself, it's already posted, it's already uploaded. We want to tell people what we are doing. No, Jesus was not keen on that. Jesus was keen on doing the Father's will. Be sensitive to what God is asking you to do. You don't have to make a big issue about it. Make sure that you are willing to respond. It was A.T. Robertson who said, there was too much excitement among the people, the Jews, too much bitterness among the Pharisees, too much suspicion on the part of Herod, and too much dullness on the part of the disciples for Jesus to remain in Galilee. He said, enough is enough. It's high time. Here's a person who is already ready. I am willing to go. Okay. Fourthly, it was also recognizable. Verse 24 says, even though you want to nobody to know about it, yet he could not escape notice. He could not escape notice. Why was it? Because obviously his ministry, what God has been doing, has gone ahead of him. Now that is the impact of a life that is lived before God and before man correctly. That's the going ahead. That's the forerunner of, as it were. Even before we open our mouths, they are able to have that impact. Now, what was the preparation that this Gentile woman needed? God prepared her heart. How did he prepare her heart? Verses 25 to 26 gives us the key. She was prepared beforehand by the Lord. Now, you may ask me, how do we know that? A couple of important things. Verse 25 says, after hearing of him, she came and fell at his feet. In other words, she has certainly heard about Christ. Because verse 26 also says, she kept asking him to cast the demon out of her. So she has heard about who Jesus is. She has heard about his power and ability to cast out the demon who is possessing her little daughter. And she heard about that. God prepared her heart. Secondly, somebody also would have obviously been impacted by Christ, someone whom she knew, and as a result she was able to say, Jesus is able to cast out demons. Maybe one of her friends, some of them would have been released by demonic hold by Jesus. A personal testimony of a personal friend. And these are things that God uses to prepare. That's what we are looking at. Okay? Either you have been personally informed about who Jesus is, an non-Christian background, or either somebody else has a testimony to say, God did this for me, God changed my life, and that becomes an impact. Thirdly, she could have also actually heard Jesus herself. She could have already heard Jesus herself. How do we know this? Mark's Gospel chapter 3 and verse 8 says that when Jesus was preaching, many from Jerusalem, from Idumea and beyond Jordan and the vicinity of Tyre and Sidon, a great number of people heard of all that he was doing and came to him. So maybe she would have been one of those individuals from Tyre and Sidon who have already come and heard about Jesus. Now she's going through a problem. Now she wants to respond. Also, if you notice Luke's Gospel chapter 6 and verse 17, in the Sermon on the Mount, it says, Jesus came down with them and stood on a level place, and there was a large crowd of his disciples and a great throng of people from all Judea and Jerusalem and the coastal region of Tyre and Sidon. So people were present. So there's a great possibility that this woman would have been or could have been one of those individuals. So God prepared. The seed has been sown. It has not yet been reaped, but the seed has been sown. And today in the world that we live in, there's so many opportunities for seed sowing, isn't it? With technology around, a person who has no access to the scriptures, a person who has no access about a church, maybe they are just scrolling. Maybe somebody has sent them a short video. Maybe somebody has sent them a link. They have information that has been given to them who Jesus is. Or maybe they have listened. They have also been benefited because of someone else's testimony, and now they want to respond. How did God prepare her? Secondly, God put a need in her heart. She had an extreme need. What is the extreme need? Here's a daughter who has been possessed by the demon. Now, does God use such situations to bring a person to himself? Yes. Maybe they are going through some problems in their lives. Yes, they know about Jesus, this is what Jesus can do, but a problem now, a need, definitely a demon possession. She would have tried different places from her own religious backgrounds to say, hey, I want freedom. But she's not been able to get that done. So God uses this extreme need. This is God's preparation. Can we thank God for God's preparation? That is not that we have to just go present the gospel. God is already preparing the heart of the individual. He's only asking us to be the bridge. Thirdly, we find she was prepared by an accurate view of Christ. An accurate view of Christ. Verse 25 says, he came and fell at his feet prostrate, acknowledging that Jesus was somebody superior, acknowledging that Jesus was indeed God. Because, if you notice in Matthew's Gospel 15 and verse 22, it says, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and began to cry out, saying, have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David, my daughter is truly demon-possessed. A lot of information there, isn't it? Here she was able to identify that Jesus is the Son of David. Here she's been able to identify Jesus as the Lord. But she has not really experienced him in a personal way. This is all head knowledge that God has been using to prepare her. Fourthly, she was prepared in spite of great disadvantages. In spite of great disadvantages. What was the disadvantage? It was a religious barrier. So far, the Jews and Gentiles have nothing to do with each other. So, as a Gentile woman, she would have thought that Jesus, being a Jew, would not have time for me. Maybe this is not for me. Maybe the Lord will not touch and heal my daughter. That was a disadvantage for her. But because God prepared her heart, she was willing to overcome those disadvantages. Fifthly, she was prepared to persist in her request for compassion. Mark 26, 7:26 says, she kept on asking him. She kept on asking him. What a faith, isn't it? She knew about Jesus. She's not experienced him. But she has faith that God will do it. And even though the disciples are saying, go away, even though Jesus is not saying anything, she still has that faith. Faith is a gift from God. We don't have to generate faith in the heart of the other individual to respond to the gospel. Faith is a gift that God puts into their heart. So, number 6, she was prepared to trust in Christ's ability. That faith in her that God had put said, God is in the Spirit. That's what God does. So when you share the gospel with a person, God puts it in their hearts. Yes, your sin problem, your bondage to this addiction, your issue that you have been having, God is able to deliver you, and He is able to not only set you free, He is able to grant you their forgiveness so that the guilt can be taken away from you. She was prepared to trust in Christ's ability. Now, if you're in this position, here's the person already, accept Jesus, He is the Son of David, I want this to be done. What would you do? Would you immediately pray the prayer of deliverance and say, okay, now you have been set free, now you can follow after Christ? How did Jesus respond? What were the confirmatory tests that He used to check up whether this faith was genuine? Important truth. In our sharing the gospel, let's not jump to conclusions to make them or push them to make a commitment. Because commitment is not something that you are doing. Transformation is not something that you are doing. It is what God is doing in the heart of that individual. A caterpillar going into a butterfly. No amount of trying to open up the shell of the caterpillar will help the butterfly to come out. It is God who does the transformation. So let's not push people to make a commitment so that one more number. No. Give God the glory. God is at work. Allow Him to do it. How does God do it? Remember that rich young ruler who came to Jesus? Rich guy. If we were there, we would have said, please join, so that I can get your money. That's what Jesus did. You want to follow me? Sell all that you have. He made things tough. And that is the reason why the disciples were who they were. They changed the world upside down because they meant business with God. Today, we just make it so simple. They don't know what they are doing, but we have already pronounced and baptized them as Christians, and then we wonder why they are not growing. Try and make it as tough as possible. I'm not saying try and sort of push them down. Depend on God to do His work. It is not your job to convert. It is God's job to transform. So what was the confirmatory test? How did God test the genuineness of this lady's faith? Number one, the silence. The silence. Matthew 15, 22 and 23 says, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is cruelly demon-possessed." Verse 23 says, "But He did not answer a word." He did not answer a word. Oftentimes people come to Jesus because they want healing, right? And today's health gospel people come because they want a good job, they want security, and some people preach like that. They say, if you come to Jesus, all your problems will be solved. Maybe the first time you ask God for something, God answered your prayer. There's an encouragement to you. So, okay, here's a God, I press the button, He gives me the answer. Second time you press the button, no answer comes. What happens to your faith? Would you still follow after God? That is what God was testing. God tested Job's faith by the suffering that he went through, and he was able to affirm, though he slay me, yet will I trust in Him. In the midst of all the other people around him, he said, trust God and die. God is not there with you. But God tested his faith. So God is testing the genuineness of this lady's faith by being silent. In your growth with God, if in case you have been asking God to answer your prayers, and He's not been answering it, don't get upset with God. Ask God, what are you trying to teach me by your silence? The silence of God. Somebody has put it across this way. The deepest feelings are shared in silence. Just to be silent. So when God is silent, don't think He's not speaking. He's speaking in the silence. Fine-tune your ear to find out what He's trying to tell you. So the Lord remained silent to find out whether our faith was genuine. Secondly, the second test was all these disciples around. The disciples, they said, what's the point of continuing? Jesus is not listening to you. That's a similar barrier that people will have today. You trusted in God, but the sickness came into your life. You trusted in God, and you lost your job. What's the point of following after Jesus? There will be people who will say that. But that is where the genuineness of your faith will come through. Thirdly, an apparent dismissal. A dismissal. Matthew 15:26. Jesus answered and said, "It is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." Harsh statement from the Lord. Now I wonder if Jesus made that statement to us and said, call us a dog, but they will still be willing to follow. But how does Mark put it across? Mark 7:27 says, "And He was saying to her, let the children be satisfied first, for it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." What's the difference between these two renderings? Mark is saying here, Jesus is not saying, I'm not going to answer your prayer. Jesus is saying, let me do this first. So she latches onto that little word first to say, if there's a first, there's also a second. If the first has to go to the Jews, okay, the second will come to the Gentiles. That was her faith. This was the great faith that she expresses in verse 28 onwards, where her persistence in her faith, okay, was only a demonstration of her faith. I remember the passage where Jesus speaks about the person who comes knocking on the judge's door and saying, please give me something. And some people interpret that verse to say, if we keep on knocking, keep on being persistent with God, God will get so fed up with us and say, this guy is asking and asking and asking, I want to get him off my back, and he will give him. No. That passage is not speaking about God who is able to get his guy off his back. But what God is saying over there is, if an unjust judge will respond to the cries of his people, how much more will your Heavenly Father respond? So the persistence is a demonstration of the faith. It is not, the thing that led to the answer. Okay? So trust God. The persistence shows the genuineness of your faith. She latches on to that one little word, first. So this is why faith is a gift from God. Normal individual, normal background, person would have walked away. I'm not interested. I came thinking that something will happen. Nothing has happened. There are a lot of people who come for meetings after meetings, but still go with the same place, same way. But if you are responsive to God, God is the one who gives you that gift of faith. You trust God to say, no matter whatever happens, I'm going to hold on. And then we do that, then we receive His blessings. Verses 29 and 30, we read about the blessings that God gave to her. Verse 29 says, and He said to her, because of this answer. What is this answer? Okay, first, I'm still here. Crumbs, I'm still willing. Because of this answer, the genuineness of her faith, the demon has gone out of your daughter. The demon has gone out of your daughter. She found that release. She came expectant. She came believing. She came with a hungry heart to the right individual. And the Lord made sure that her needs were met. Other people who are hungry for the gospel today. Now you may say, no, people are not hungry. They are doing their own thing. No, God is preparing the hearts of individuals. What did Jesus say? Look at the fields. They are ripe unto harvest. Maybe looking around and say, where is it ripe? Well, Jesus said, look, and see it is already ripe. Why? Because God is preparing. Let's not look with our physical eyes. God is preparing the hearts of people. All that He's asking us is, be the bridge. Be the bridge. Make that intentional and a decision. Be sensitive to the voice of God and ask Him to lead you. Now, what are the religious barriers today? What are the religious barriers today? The application of that. India's population has more than tripled in the 6 decades following partition, from 361 million people in the 1951 census to 1.2 billion in 2011 and 1.4 billion in 2022. Okay? Roughly 1 million people are added every month to our statistics. And as a result, by the year 2030, we will overtake China to be the most populous nation. Is it a barrier? Is it an opportunity? God has placed us in this nation with this strategic purpose. Okay? So let's not say, oh, this is happening, I want to leave India and go away. God has placed us here for a purpose. God is preparing His church. God is preparing His bride. God is preparing the hearts of individuals to respond to the gospel. Strategic place to be in today. Let's be sensitive to what God is doing. India's religious composition has largely remained stable since 1947. In percentage terms, India's 6 largest religious groups have remained relatively stable since independence. In other words, there has been no major change. Interestingly, Christians have made up 2% to 3% in every census since 1951. What does that tell us about the church in India? Opportunities, but the church is not moving according to the census. Why? Do we see this as a barrier? Do we say, oh, we are a minority, what can we do? Or do we see what God is doing and only asking us? Not a question of numbers, not a question of putting it up on social media, but a question of faithfully doing that one-on-one work that God is calling you and me to do. So 10 common barriers of evangelism. Why is it that the church is not growing in that percentage? What are some of the barriers that individuals have set up so that they are not able to be intentional that Jesus did to leave one place and go to another place tired because there was a woman waiting there to be saved? What are the barriers that we put up? A couple of important things. Number one, I'm afraid I will offend the person and as a result lose a relationship. We value relationships more than the gospel. Is that your problem? Is that a barrier that you have? Matthew 10:37 says, anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Number two, if I share, they might say, mind your own business. Okay. If they say mind your own business, what do? You mind your own business. What is your business? To share the gospel. It was D.L. Moody who stepped up to a man who was a perfect stranger to him and just asked him, sir, are you a Christian? And the man responded, you mind your own business. And Moody promptly replied, this, sir, is my business. So if a person says, mind your own business, that's the job that God has given to us, isn't it? We are therefore Christ's ambassadors. That's our business. That's our business. Number three, I don't know where to start. We say, yes, I want to share, but I don't know where to start. Simple things. What does the Lord tell the demonic individual in Galaxy who was freed from his demons? He says, first go and tell your own people, tell them what God has done for you. That's the place to start. If God has done a work in your life, tell others what God has done. You don't have to know theology. You don't have to know a whole lot of the Bible. Share with others what God has done. That is the starting point. Number four, fourth excuse. I'm still learning the Bible. I don't have all the answers to all the questions people might ask. Good news is you will never know all the answers to all the questions people will ask. Only on the other side, when we get to heaven, the scripture says, when we see him, we shall be like him. Okay? So here you are not going to get all the answers. So don't wait to accumulate all the answers. No. Step out. And as you step out by faith, people ask you a question. What do? Say, I don't know. I will find out and come back to you. That will be an encouragement for you to learn, to grow in your walk with God. Number five, I need to learn more creative methods in evangelism. Then I will evangelize. I will wait for the light to shine from heaven to say, this is the individual, or some new technology I will make and then do. Yes, you can do that, but start out right away by sharing what God has done for you. Luke 16:10 says, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. We want the much, but God says, start with a little, then I will give you the much. Number six, they will think I'm crazy and I'm a religious fanatic. People are afraid that they will brand you. 1 Corinthians 1:18 says, the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. So if a foolish person calls you a fanatic, should you be upset? No, don't take it to heart. No, because in God's eyes, you are not a fool. Because the Bible says the definition of a fool is, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. Number seven, evangelism is the responsibility of the leaders in the church. No. Go into all the world. Who? Every individual, not just a few. Number eight, I'm not an extrovert. By nature, I'm very shy. I find it difficult to talk with people. Don't put that as an excuse. It's not that you don't talk with people at all. You may find it difficult to start a conversation. Once you start the conversation, you'll keep talking. So don't use that as an excuse that you cannot share. Number nine, I will pray for the person instead of speaking with them. Okay? Oftentimes we use that as an, I will pray. Okay, good you pray. But are you sincerely praying? Don't use that as an excuse, because once you start praying, then God will give you the opportunity to speak as well. Number 10, they seem so stubborn, I don't think they will accept the message. Who are you and I to decide whether they are stubborn or not? Look by back into your own life. How long did it take for that stubbornness to be broken? God spoke, God spoke, God spoke. It is not as soon as God spoke the first time you responded, isn't it? So give God the opportunity to break their stubborn hearts. Finally, what bridges should we be building? What bridges should we be building? Simple practical steps. Number one, be intentional. Be intentional. Jesus decided to move from this place to that place. Have you taken any intentional steps to build bridges with people of other faiths? With individuals who think they are believers, but once you start a conversation, you will begin to realize that they are not really. Begin to be intentional. Secondly, be sensitive. Be sensitive to the voice of the Spirit of God, because we are co-workers together with Him. You are not alone. So be sensitive to what God is telling you, where you have to go, to whom you have to speak. Thirdly, be transparent. Be transparent. Don't try and portray that everything's all fine with you. Don't try and portray that you have no more problems now. Be transparent so that they understand this truth, that once they become a Christian, it's not that everything is going to become rosy. That an individual will still have problems in their lives. So don't project a God who will take away all problems, but rather project a God who is real to you in the midst of those problems. And as the transparency is seen, they will be willing to respond. Fourthly, be inclusive. Be inclusive. When I say inclusive, as we're talking about the church right now, how inclusive? Recognize they are individuals created in the image of God and learn to love them. But be careful that you don't accept those practices into the church as well. And this is where at times also we have messed up in the Christian history. Because in the desire to be inclusive, it's okay, you came from this background, you can have your same practices, that's how the Christian festivals, other festivals that were there were incorporated, and then, so you can do the same thing. And people do not really know the difference. Fifthly, be articulate. What do you mean by articulate? You have it clearly in your mind what you want to communicate. Okay? If you don't have it clearly in your mind what you want to communicate, you may start with the weather, continue with the weather, and not go any further. Decide in your mind, okay, this is what I want to share. Look for that opportunity, look for that break in conversation, look for that link in the conversation which will help you to link it up to the gospel. Sixthly, be simple. Be simple. Don't make things complicated. Don't use words like regeneration and redemption and atonement to a person who doesn't know anything about a Christian faith. Complicated. A simple practice for you would be try and speak the gospel in as simple words as possible. If you have grown up in the Christian faith, all this jargon that you have heard has been filled into your minds. And as a result, you think they never understand. Simple illustration, when you are speaking about you must be born again, the person from in the background would say, what? I want to be free from being born again. Because I want to get free from the cycle of rebirth. And you're coming to him with good news to say, you have to be born again. That's not good news. So, learn to be simple in your communication which will make sense to the other individual. Number 7, be passionate. If you don't believe in something, it will get across to the other person. If you are passionate about your faith, it will get communicated to the other person. If you believe that Jesus is the only way, that's your passion, it will come across. But if you believe Jesus is one of the ways, it will also come across. So be passionate about what you believe, and that has to start with us. And finally, number 8, be a prayer. Be a prayer. Individual who is in regular communion with God, sensitive to the voice of the Holy Spirit, will automatically become intentional in sharing the faith and building bridges. In the morning session, I asked you to identify 3 names. Individuals who will be lost, disconnected, disillusioned. Continue to pray for those individuals. Even as you go back from here, ask God to help you to be intentional, to build those bridges. Maybe I understood this evening from Jesus' example of how he ministered to that Canaanite woman. Remember, God is more interested in that individual than you and I did. Because Jesus died for them. Once we get that clear in our minds, then it takes the load off our shoulders to think it is all up to us. No, it's not up to you. God has gone ahead, bearing the way. Let's join together in the mission of reconciliation. Let's go ahead and pray together. Spend a few moments this evening looking into your own lives and finding out how intentional have you been in building bridges across with individuals who do not know the Lord. Are you happy just the fact that you know the Lord? Have you realized that it is not all up to you? The Lord only wants us to be willing, to be responsive to what God is speaking to us. And God will open the doors. It could be just the sowing of the seed. It could be the watering. It could be the reaping. Just as much as God prepared this Canaanite. Make this intentional prayer, even for those three individuals whom you have noted down. And maybe others who have come across your mind as a result of this session. Begin to specifically pray, be sensitive, hear God's voice, and allow God to transform their lives. Let's pray. Father, we thank you, Lord, so much that you are a perfect example of who you want us to be, and you have left us in this world so that people can see you in us. Father, we pray that you will help us to be faithful, that you will find us faithful in the purpose for which you have placed us in this world, the purpose for which you have placed us in this great land of India. There are so many people being added every day, but so many people who are lost, disconnected, disillusioned. We Lord, that you will help us to show the real Jesus to them, Lord, by our